but luckily, we won't have to answer them. Because by the end of this lesson, your character will have incredible animations for running, jumping, and even being knocked unconscious. To pull this off, we will have to become very familiar with something called an animation controller. You may not be surprised to learn that an animation controller is something that controls a character's animations. It is a weird diagram looking thing with boxes representing various states that the player can be in, like running or jumping, each of which has a unique animation. There are also transitions between each of these states where, for example, the player can go from running to jumping or from standing to dying. So in our player controller script, we just need to program the if statements that will control what state from a running state. Cool, so we've got a lot of awesome functionality in our game now, so you can see the player not actually seen that's constantly double click. You can see that there's actually an animator component already applied to it, and it has a controller for a simple character. So what we can do is we can actually double click on that simple character box, and now you see that it actually opens up a brand new window in our scene for animators. Now, if you want to see all of the different windows that you could actually add, is where the game over. If you want to see all of the different windows that you could actually add to Unity, you can actually see on the top left, there's the window button, and then you can actually add a bunch of other windows that you can use. One that you might have seen before, actually our console, is where the game over message is being sent. So you can add other windows if you want to. So now in our animator window, you can see that we have a strange view of this button that says entry, but not really anything else. You can actually move around in this view. There's a lot more going on. So we can press the Alt key and hold it and then left click and drag. Controller goes straight to our idle animation, which is why it looks like the player is not moving at all. So the player's not moving. Surprise, they're not moving incredibly fast. They're just not moving at all. So our animator controller actually controls all of the different states that our character can be in. So our character can be idle, and then from idle, these arrows actually mean that they then can go into one of these different states. So it can go from idle into a walking static state, which means that they're not actually walking in a direction, they're just walking in place. You can also run in place with run static. You can walk, see that it pops up a little example walk static through the scene compared to if we go to that, we have another animation. And so you can see it actually looks like this character is walking, which is cool. If we double click on run and we press play, you can see that this one is actually moving through the scene compared to all of the different conditions that need to happen to act. And they click on the player in the hierarchy. And then under the inspector in the animator component, where you see controller, you're going to double click on simple character. This will open up your animator window for your player character. And so now you can go look around and see all of the different animation states. You can click into the different states by double clicking on them. And then you can preview their different animations like walking static or walking. And then you can take a look at some of the different transitions and see the different conditions that they need to follow to be able to move. Now it's your turn. You're going to double click for your different states. So we've gotten to move around our animator window just a little bit, and we've gotten to go and look into some of the animations themselves and preview them. And we've seen some of the movement between all the transitions. So now what we're going to animation, a parameters section that opens, and here you're going to play around with the values in these transitions. So knowing that our transition for our speed needs to be greater than 0.25 to be able to start this walk static animation, we can actually go over on the left side of the animator window to parameters. By double-clicking on them, and then you can. And if we click this tab, we have a parameters section that opens, and here you can actually see the parameter of the speed that we can set. So in fact, if we make this, for example, 0.3, because 0.3 is greater than 0.25, and now when we press play in our game, we can actually see when the player enters the game, then it should go into the idle state, and then it'll go down to the walk static state. So we're in idle, and then it starts walking. Now, it looks a little weird because the background is moving incredibly fast. We'll just make this 1, so it's definitely more than 0.5. We'll just make this 1, so it's definitely like... There you go. And then you can see it goes from the walking to the running animation. Now that does look kind of weird because the scene is just moving, so we can actually set the parameter of the speed that we can set. So in fact, if we make this, for example, 0.3, because 0.3 is greater than 0.25, and now when we press play in our game, we can actually see when the player enters the game, then it should go into the idle state, and then it'll go down to the walk static state. So we're in idle, and then it starts walking. It should go into the idle state, and then it'll go down to the walk static state. Greater than 0.25, 3 is 3. So in fact, if we make this, and if we click this tab, we have a parameters section that opens, and here you can actually see the parameter of the speed that we can set. So in fact, if we make this, for example, 0.3, because 0.3 is greater than 0.25, and now when we press play in our game, we can actually see compared to the actual static here. Low comparatively, we'll set this to something like this. Fine. We can fix that at some point. Now they're just moving so fast that they just end up back in the same place on Earth. And then one more thing that you can see is you can actually see different animation layers, which we'll go into, but it's just kind of interesting to see how they all work. So with the idle, you can see all of these different idle states that it can go into. With jump in the hierarchy, in open up, you're going to find run static, right click on it, set it. So see this transition happen. Run static. It actually looks like this character is walking. See that this one is actually moving as the default layer state. Set it as the default layer state. And then in your parameters, and then we can really see our player running through the scene. something that people usually do. So we're going to do some things to the jumping animation to really cool. So we've got it so that our player looks really good while they're running through the scene. But we do have another weird thing where it's pretty awkward that they're still running while they're jumping, unless you're in like an action movie. That's not really something that people usually do. So we're going to do some things to the jumping animation to really make it look real. In fact, we're actually going to use our player controller script to be able to do that. So if we go to our assets, and we can just close off the source files, collapse them because it opened it up when we rigidbody, we're going to get a reference to our animator. So we'll also make this private because we don't need to find this outside of our class. Animation. Rigidbody, we're going to get a reference to our animator. So we'll also make this private because we don't need to find this outside of our class. It'll be of type animator, not animation. And we'll just call this player anim for now, for player animation. Now, just like our rigid body, we actually need to get the actual component on our object. So player anim is set to our get component. And what component are we getting? Our animator. And then make sure to call the method and close your statement. Now, in our update function is actually where we want this animation to happen, but what animation exactly are we trying to make happen? Well, let's see. In Unity, if we go to our animator, to type animator, goes off the, if we open our player, so if we're actually going to use our player controller script this time to our animator, because we don't need to find this outside of our class, it'll be of type animator, not anim. And what component are we getting? Our animator. And then make sure to call the method and close your statement. Now, are we trying to make happen? Well, let's see. To running jump. Now, how do we get there? Interesting. So, you can see to get from run, under our conditions, there's something called a jump trig. So, let's see if in our parameters, so we do have something called a jump trig that we would be able to use. Now, if we follow the name animation int, so that's an integer, they're whole numbers, under our static B, let's take a look at some of the methods. Wow, that's super convenient. Dot set trigger, set the value of the given trigger parameter. And it's got an overload. The name. So if we set, when we press the weird, but we have should activate our jump trigger when we press the space bar, since it's inside our if statement. Well, let's give it a try. Let's see what happens. So if we play our game and we jump, oh my gosh, that was a little weird, but we have the jumping animation. Well, that's cool. It kind of looks like it's like Superman or something, superhero. All right, so to get started activating these animations, what we're going to do is in our player controller class, make sure that you add your own animator variable. And then in the start method, make sure that you assign your animator variable to set the trigger for our jump animation. Now it's your turn. Great. Now our player character animations are in a really good place. We have our running animations, and then when we jump, you can see we jump for joy. But we have this weird little issue where when we jump, the animation stops short, and then we start running in the air, which doesn't really look right. So we're actually going to go into our running jump animation. And similarly to how we set the speed to be a little bit faster for the run to just make it look like the player's running faster, we're going to set our animation speed just a bit slower. We'll do 0.7 just so that the animation now runs just a bit longer instead of faster. So when we press play, now when we jump, the animation definitely works a lot better. It lasts a bit longer. I think one thing that we're going to do just to make it look, people don't normally weigh just one. So let's play around a little bit over like times the actual mass. So we'll do like a 7. Let's make it a little bit more. The jumping animation, click on the running jump. So we'll set the animation speed to be a kilograms. And then we a little bit faster when they reach the ground. Now it's your turn. Cool, so we've hit the ground running now. We have our running animation set up. We have a jumping animation so we can fly through the air. So excited. Now we just need to add one more thing, which is whenever we collide with one of these barriers, we're not just going to keep running into one of the barriers. So what we can do is we can use one of our other layers for character deaths. Now, in our deaths layer, you can see all of the different kinds of states that they can go through. So we can go from alive to a death 1. So let's see if we double click that, and we'll play that, see how that looks. Falls over, and then death 1 is just the character falling over. Death 2, what does this one look like? Falls over in front, so falling over kind of manage the state. We go into our scripts again, all the way down at the bottom here. Go to our player controller script. So now in our player controller script, we're going to go to the place where we end the game, where we have that game over bit of code. So down in our on collision enter, you can see if we kind of methods we have for our player a bool. So can we set, and we wanted the death bool to be true. So let's see, we can use an int ID, or we can use the string name. So I believe the name was if we go in. So as a good way to, so if we go into our scripts where set a, now let's see how we can actually make this death and, let's see, the conditions are, so the death bool should be set to true, and there's a death type integer that's equal to 1 to be actually set when we go into our game. Player. So we're going to need to change the statement after it. So if game over is not equal to true, so the same thing as saying game over equals false, then it will do this thing. In fact, there's actually even a shorter way that we can write exclamation point in front of game over. So in this case, this says if the game is not over because of this exclamation point, then do these lines of code. Now if I save, we can see if the player runs do is all right, so we've made it to the end of this lesson, and to wrap everything up, so that's all really we learned. All that way we could make their transition, all about our animator controller on our player. We learned a whole lot about animation states, their transitions, how they work. We even dug into some of the parameters, so that way we could make the player run even faster, and controlled how we can activate all of these different parameters in code. in our player controller script, we added in all of these into, but not least, we learned how to use, we could keep the player some sound. Sound effects and particle effects. Don't believe me? Just compare this to this. That second one, that's what we want. Well, by the end of this behind the character forward environment, 3D environment, sound in Unity works just like it does in the real world. You have audio sources so that the audio listener can hear it. And to make all that happen, I'll see you in Unity. Alright, so we have a really good looking game now, with all of the cool mechanics and animations set up properly. And now we're just going to add the finishing touches when we collide with that obstacle to create a really cool smoke effect. So, to do that, we're actually going to learn how to use particle effects. Now, if you go into your assets, under the course library, there's actually a particles folder. And if you expand the particles folder, you can see there's dirt splatter and smoke explosion. So we're going to take this explosion smoke and drag it into our hierarchy. And then you can see it creates this really cool puff when we place it. And you can see there's actually a little section down in the bottom right of our scene. We'll make that a little bigger. And in this menu, you can actually play, restart, or stop the animation of our particle effect. So if we play, and we can restart as much as we want, and we can stop it, and we can play. So this is just a kind of cool way to see the effects and how they work. Now, another cool thing about our particle system is that there's a whole bunch of options that you can actually change on the particle system to be able to make it do different things. So you can actually go and change how fast the actual particles move over their lifetime. So if we set the speed to be 10 times as fast, should move even faster than before. Yeah, so it's like a big, that's actually kind of cool. I'm going to leave that. So we'll stop that. So it's pretty cool. We can set different options too that we want. So we could change the colors if we wanted to. We could change how they actually expand. All of these other different options. Actually, you know what? I'm going to set the speed back to be 2. So there's all these different ways that you can play around with particle effects. Honestly, you could do 100 different things with them. I'm not going to go too crazy just because the base effect is really good for now, so we're just going to use it. One thing that you want to be really careful of, though, with your particle effects is if you open up the particle system menu, you can actually see there's a play on awake, and if we set that to true, so that would immediately create a huge puff of smoke when the game starts. That's not exactly what we want to happen. That's not the kind of effect that we're trying to create, unless this character were a magician, then it would make a lot more sense. So we'll uncheck the play on awake, is really good, and we can, to be able to expand than before. Yeah, so it's like a big, that's actually kind of cool. I'm going to leave that. So we'll stop that. So it's pretty cool. We can set different options too that we want. So we could change the colors if we wanted to. We could change how they actually expand. All of these other different options. Actually, you know what? I'm going to set the speed back to be 2. So there's all these different ways that little section down in the bottom right of our scene. We'll make that a little bigger. And in this menu, you can actually play, restart, or stop the animation of our particle effect. So if we play, and we can restart as much as we want, and we can stop it, and we can play. So this is just a kind of cool way to see the effects and how they work. Now, another cool thing about our particle system is that there's a whole bunch of options that you can actually change on the particle system to be able to make it do different things. So you can actually go and change how fast the actual particles move over their lifetime. So if we set the speed to be 10 times as fast, should move even faster than before. Yeah, so it's like a big, that's actually kind of cool. I'm going to leave that. So we'll stop that. So it's pretty cool. We can set different options too that we want. So we could change the colors if we wanted to. We could change how they actually expand. All of these other different options. Actually, you know what? I'm going to set the speed back to be 2. So there's all these different ways that you can play around with particle effects. Honestly, you could do 100 different things with them. I'm not going to go too crazy just because the base effect is really good for now, so we're just going to use it. One thing that you want to be really careful of, though, with your particle effects is if you open up the particle options too that we want. So one thing that you want to be really careful of, though, with your particle effects is sense. So we'll underneath our player or aided, so it belongs. You can see like smoke on play is when we play, we can actually like move our go and the bottom of the player's feet, and then we restart, and it creates a really cool effect. So now what you're going to do is you're going to go into your assets folder in your course library, go to the particles folder, take the explosion smoke, and you're actually going to drag it directly onto the player so that then it becomes a child object of that player. And then you can go and fiddle around with the explosion smoke, setting its position. Maybe you want to make it on the head for some reason. You can go and mess around with some of the settings, but just don't go too wild with it. And then you're good to go. Now it's your turn. I'm not going to go too crazy just because. And if we set child player is when we play, I think is good. And then play. Cool. So that's pretty good position to your asset. Go to so that and then you can for some reason maybe you want position. Cool. So we have this cool smoke explosion here that we can play. But one of the things that you do it better than I can, like that, pretty close. The play. But one of the so a rigid body case because player something statement. So now this will create now in line effect. Then make sure we get down to the player when we press play. Player control so and an effect that we for. And All right, so our particles are getting pretty good right now. When we run into one of these obstacles, we get that big puff of smoke. So we're going to add a little bit more to our character. So we have this cool dirt splatter effect. So we're actually just going to drag this onto our player. And now we have that dirt particle effect. Now it does look a little weird. You can actually player controller want to play. So let's stop our particle from when they run into an obstacle. There's just so we're particle system very strange once again. To the player guy. When we hit the ground, this game and give it that. Now, on your main camera, there's a very interesting component on the camera called an microphone to be able to hear it. If we actually type in of our course, the effects, do the second one. This one definitely, well actually, now one thing we want to make sure is it seemed like a pretty short, do like 0.6 is probably 60. Again, we'll hear the music one more time. Cool, so we've got some background music playing in our game for our nice happy feel in our code. So click audio for the player. We're going to also has no. So now what you're gonna do then in Cool. So we've added our sounds for jumping and crashing, which is great. Now we're going to go back into our player controller script, and we're just going to create another private variable for our component. So this one will be this player audio. So this is the audio that plays from the player. In our start method, we're very familiar now. So we'll use our player audio variable, and we're going to. So down in our code, when the player jumps, we're actually going to use our new player audio variable. and we're going to use a, so we play, and then it looks like there's another variable that we can add. When anything starts, it'll play. And then there's a play one shot. So basically that'll just play it once and then it'll be done. To play, and we're going to set it to full volume once no. So now that we have the audio source, all right, and whenever the player runs happening, added a crash about how they work, since whenever we use them, like audio variable in our colors, so we should particle effects as some of the numbers, a bunch of different cool effects happen. We added our particle effects as child underneath the play. We add when later controllers so in the next project. Welcome to Challenge 3. So, let's review what we did for our Unit 3 project. So we have our game here, and we have the cool, awesome sound effects and background music to make our player jump. You can see that background is scrolling and it repeats all the time. We have all of these different objects spawning. Cool. And then when we hit our object, we have a huge up and see what this challenge is supposed to be like. So, let's see, I'll press these bombs. I guess I have to avoid these bombs. Oh, cool. If I hit the bottom of the ground, I actually make a bouncy noise. That's fun. It's enjoyable. Alright, so let's see. I can't. Okay, well, let's figure out what we're gonna do. We want the balloon to float when we press the X are being spawned, right? Down to the ground. Cool little bouncy effect. You check out the instructions